The letter that couldn't wait it was a rainy morning in Palo Alto. Soft gray clouds stretched endlessly over the sky, casting a blanket of stillness over the world. Sundar Pichai sat alone in his study, surrounded by silence, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of raindrops against the wide glass windows. Despite all the brilliance around him, his awards, framed patents, photos with presidents, and shelves lined with books on technology and innovation, his heart was weighed down with something much heavier than work. In his hands, he held an old wooden box, aged, scratched, yet polished with the faint glow of memory. His mother's box. His mother, Lakshmi, had passed away 2 weeks ago. He hadn't fully processed the loss. He had been too occupied with condolences, arrangements, and public appearances. Being Sundar Pichai came with responsibilities. He wasn't just a son grieving. He was the CEO of one of the world's largest companies. And yet, no amount of power or prestige could shield him from this kind of pain. His mother had been his anchor, his moral compass, the one who never cared about what title he held, but always asked if he had eaten, if he was sleeping enough, if he still remembered to call his uncle back in Chennai when the box arrived at his home, hand-delivered by a courier from India with a note in Tamil that simply said, "Open this when your heart is ready." He had placed it on the corner of his desk and ignored it. Days passed, then nights. But something about this morning, maybe it was the rain, maybe it was the dream he had the night before where he saw his mother cooking dosa and laughing like she used to when he was boy, made him pick it up, dot his fingers, trembled slightly as he undid the clasp. It gave a soft click and the lid creaked open, slowly, revealing the contents inside. But what was inside wasn't what he expected at all. No jewelry, no heirlooms, no photographs. Just a stack of handwritten letters tied with a pale green ribbon. Underneath them, wrapped in an old handkerchief, was something heavy and metallic. He didn't open that part yet. Instead, he picked up the first letter. It was dated 1995. Dear Sundar, if you're reading this, it means I've left the world behind, but not you. I could never leave you. You're the reason I lived with joy. There are things I've kept from you, not because I didn't trust you, but because the world you were going to build needed you strong. But now it's time you knew everything. Our family story begins long before you were born. And it is not what you think. He blinked, reading the words again. His heart began to pound, not with fear, but with confusion, anticipation. What did she mean? What family story? What was kept from him? His mind raced back to his childhood in Madurai. He remembered the narrow streets, the smell of jasmine in the morning, the way his mother would wake him up before sunrise to study under, the dim orange glow of their single bulb. They didn't have much, but they had enough, or so he thought. His father, Raghunatha, was a quiet man, an electrical engineer who rarely spoke unless it was about circuits or cricket. And his mother, she was always full of light and love, endlessly, resourceful, holding the family together with the strength of her will. But there had been little things that never made sense back then. Moments that as a child he dismissed, but now, in hindsight, seemed like cracks in a wall he never questioned. There was that time when he was 10 and a man had come to the house, a stranger in a suit. He had spoken in hushed tones with his mother, while Sundar watched from behind the curtain. He remembered her crying after that man left. She had told Sundar it was just someone asking for directions, and then there was the old black and white photo she kept in the kitchen drawer, one she never let him touch. It showed a young woman, much like Lakshmi, but in a sari made of silk, standing beside a man in a military uniform. They looked important, powerful, nothing like the modest life he knew. Once, when he asked about it, she simply said, "That was a story that ended long ago." But now the story was beginning again. He opened the second letter. Sundar, the truth is, we are not who we said we were. I changed everything for your safety. Your grandfather was not a postman, as I told you. He was a scientist for the Indian Space Research Organization. And not just any scientist. He developed propulsion systems that were so advanced, even foreign governments tried to recruit him. When he refused, they silenced him. After his death, I went into hiding with you. I changed my name. I changed your identity. You were born into a world of danger, not by your choice. I did what I had to do so you could live free, dream big, and never carry the burden of the past. But now it's time you know it. Sundar stopped reading. He stood up from his chair and paced the room. Letters still in hand, heart thudding harder now. It felt like the ground beneath him had shifted. His entire life, his history, his foundation, his story was being rewritten in ink on aged paper. He wanted to scream. He wanted to call someone, but who could he even call? Who would understand what it felt like to be Sundar Pichai, the public figure, the global leader, suddenly realizing he didn't even know who he truly was? He looked back at the box. The metal object wrapped in the old cloth seemed to call out to him. Gently, with trembling fingers, he unwrapped it. Inside was a circular medallion, heavy, engraved with the emblem of India. But this wasn't ordinary. The back was etched with a code he didn't recognize. He pulled out his phone and scanned the code. It didn't lead to any website. It didn't match any government registry. Nothing. But something about it looked familiar. Maybe from his childhood? Or a symbol from one of the books his mother used to read. He dug back into the box. Beneath the remaining letters was a small envelope sealed with red wax. He broke the seal. Inside was a key. A single silver key with a tag attached. Locker 417. Chennai Central Railway Station. He froze. A flood of memories returned. When he was a child, they used to visit Chennai every year. One time, when he was about 7, he remembered getting lost at the station. He cried until a kind porter found him and returned him to his mother. She had scolded him fiercely, but later that night, she held him close and whispered, "This station holds secrets, my son. Always stay close to me." He never understood what she meant until now. His phone buzzed, breaking his thoughts. It was an email from Google Legal. A meeting had been moved. But Sundar didn't care. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't on work. It was on a journey that began before you knew it. A journey his mother had prepared for him in silence and in love. He took a deep breath, sat back down, and picked up the next letter. But before he opened it, he whispered to himself, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" And as if an answer, the next letter began with, "Because you needed to become the man the world saw before you could handle the truth behind it." Sundar closed his eyes. Overwhelmed. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, as though the sky itself was weeping with him. But inside, something had awakened. He didn't know what he would find in Chennai. He didn't know what the rest of the letters held. But he knew one thing: his life was no longer just about Google or Silicon Valley or technology. It was about rediscovering where he came from, who he was, and what legacy he was truly meant to carry. Asterisk. The journey home at the airport was loud, buzzing with activity, the hum of voices and rolling luggage, mixing with overhead announcements. But inside Sundar Pichai's mind, there was only silence. Not the kind that brought peace, but the kind that came before a storm. He sat in the VIP lounge, surrounded by people who looked at him with respect, admiration, curiosity. He was used to that by now. The glances, the subtle whispers, the wide-eyed recognition. But today, none of it mattered. Today, Sundar wasn't flying as the CEO of Google. He was flying as a sun chasing shadows. He clutched a small leather satchel in his lap. Inside were the letters from his mother. The key to locker 417 at Chennai Central Railway Station. Every few minutes, his fingers brushed over the key, as if to remind himself that this wasn't a dream. That everything he'd read, the secret history, the coded medallion, the revelation about his grandfather, was real. He hadn't told anyone why he was leaving. Not his executive assistant, not the board, not even his wife. All he had said was, "I need to go to India, something personal." And surprisingly, nobody pushed back. Perhaps they saw the look in his eyes, the urgency, the deep ache. Or perhaps some part of him had always carried this mystery with him, and now that it was coming to the surface, those around him instinctively gave space dot as the plane took off. Sundar leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. Memories came rushing back, sharp and vivid. Like scenes from a film he thought he had forgotten. He saw his mother at the stove, flipping dosas with practiced grace, humming old Tamil songs. As the morning sunlight spilled across the tiled floor, he saw himself as a boy, sitting on the floor with a notebook, asking her what electricity was and why stars twinkled. She always encouraged his questions, always smiled and said, "You'll figure it out one day, kinda." And now, decades later, he was still trying to figure things out, not about science, but about himself. He landed in Chennai just after dawn. The air was thick with humidity and the earthy scent of rain-soaked roads. Rickshaws zoomed by, honking, weaving between buses and scooters. Despite the years and all the changes, Chennai still felt familiar. Still smelled like jasmine and diesel. And fried snacks. He breathed it in, feeling something ancient stir within him. His driver was waiting with a sign that said, "Mr. Pichai." Sundar waved him off gently. "I'll manage," he said. He didn't want the comfort of tinted windows and leather seats. He wanted to walk, to feel the ground of his childhood under his feet. So he stepped into the chaos of the street, weaving through the crowd with a purpose he didn't entirely understand yet. After an hour, he stood at the entrance of Chennai Central Railway Station. Thought it loomed before him like a red brick. Monument from another lifetime. The large arched windows, the fading white domes, the rhythmic pulse of the trains coming and going. It hadn't changed much since he was a child. Even the old tea vendor near the entrance looked the same, though perhaps now with grayer hair. Walked past the ticket counters, the food stalls, and the family sitting on the floor with bundles of luggage. His heart pounded with every step. What would he find in locker 417? Another letter? Something bigger? He reached the row of lockers, most of them rusted and scratched. He scanned them until his eyes landed on 417. His hands shook as he pulled the key from his satchel. He hesitated for a moment, took a deep breath, and slid it into the lock. Click. The door swung open with a creak. Inside was a small metal suitcase, dented at the edges but locked tight. There was a note taped to the top. "Open this somewhere." Safe? He quickly removed it, shut the locker, and left the station, trying to keep his expression calm, even though his mind was racing. He found a quiet hotel on a side street, checked in under a different name, and locked the door behind him once he got to the room. He sat on the bed, the suitcase in front of him, heart pounding louder than before. He unclipped the latches. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Faded paper, some in English, some in Tamil, stamped with government seals. Classified. Restricted. Top secret. His eyes widened. The first file was labeled Project Veda. He opened it carefully, flipping through the pages. His grandfather, Dr. Shiva Prakash Narayanan, had been a lead engineer on a propulsion system that used an advanced energy source, something that didn't rely on conventional fuels, something that could, if successful, revolutionize aerospace travel. Sundar had seen concepts like this before, even worked on them in Silicon Valley. But these papers were dated 1974. His hands shook slightly. This was decades ahead of its time. There were letters from the Ministry of Defense, notes of concern, warnings that foreign agents were targeting the scientists. One letter, in particular, made Sundar pause. It was a transcript of an intercepted call. Someone had threatened to eliminate all assets related to Veda. The dates aligned with the year his grandfather died. It wasn't a heart attack, as he had been told. It had been a cover-up. A silent rage rose in Sundar's chest. Not the kind that demanded violence, but the kind that demanded truth. His mother had hidden all of this, lived with it, raised him under a false name, left everything behind to keep him safe. And yet, she never showed bitterness, never spoke a word of it, only love, only strength. He realized now how much weight she had carried all those years, all while encouraging his dreams, pushing him to explore the world of technology, perhaps so he would one day be ready to finish what his grandfather started. There was another file marked for Sundar. He opened it and found a handwritten letter inside. My dear son, if you found this, it means you are ready. Your grandfather's work was never finished, but you are the only one who can continue it now, not because of your title, but because of your spirit. I've watched you lead with kindness, not ego. You've never forgotten your roots. And that's why I believe the world needs to see what you're truly capable of, what our family was truly meant for. This suitcase is not a burden. It is a map. A map to something greater. Below the letter was a folder labeled coordinates. Sundar opened it. Inside was a satellite map with a marked location deep in the Nilgiri hills, along with an encrypted USB drive. He sat back, overwhelmed. This was more than a family secret. This was a mission, and somewhere deep in the hills of India, something was waiting for him, something his mother had protected, something his grandfather may have died for. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. It was a message from a private number. You are being watched. Don't trust anyone. His breath caught in his throat. He quickly turned off his phone and looked around the hotel room. Had someone followed him? Had unlocking the locker triggered something? He closed the suitcase, locked it again, and placed it under the bed. His mind raced. He needed time to think, to plan, to breathe, but there was no time now. Something had been set in motion. Something far bigger than he imagined, and he had no choice but to follow it. As he stared out the window at the crowded Chennai street below, a single tear rolled down his cheek, not out of fear, but out of deep gratitude. His mother had left him more than a box. She had left him his purpose. Asterisk. Whispers in the hills. Nilgiri hills stretched wide and silent beneath the deepening afternoon sky, their forested slopes layered with mist like forgotten stories wrapped in time. Sundar Pichai sat in the back of a weathered jeep, winding through the narrow, uneven trails carved into the green folds of the mountain. The air was crisp and scented with eucalyptus and pine. For miles there was nothing but trees, valleys, and the occasional tea plantation. No cell towers, no buzzing notifications, no modern distractions. Just nature and a silence that hummed with secrets. The coordinates in the folder had led him here, far from the noise of Chennai, deep into the southern heartland of Tamil Nadu. He hadn't told anyone about this trip, not his family, not his colleagues, not even his most trusted advisors. After the anonymous message in the hotel, he had bought a second-hand phone, turned off his primary devices, and paid cash for everything. It felt strange to live in the shadows. He was Sundar Pichai, known by almost everyone yet here, among the mountains. He was just another traveler with a backpack and a destination that made no sense to anyone else. The driver, a middle-aged man with graying stubble and a gentle voice, occasionally glanced at Sundar in the rearview mirror. He didn't ask many questions, but Sundar noticed his eyes lingered on the suitcase lying beside him on the seat. "Where exactly are we going, sir?" The man asked softly as they hit another sharp bend. "Not many tourists come out this way." Sundar hesitated before replying. "Just visiting some family land. My mother left instructions." The driver nodded slowly. "A lot of stories up here. Spirits, hidden places. They say there were secret army labs in the old days. Tunnels and bunkers. People still hear sounds in the night." Sundar offered a polite smile, but said nothing more. The less he revealed, the safer this would be. After another hour of bumpy travel, they reached a clearing where the road ended. The path ahead was overgrown, vines tangled with wild grass, and a crumbling stone archway stood like a forgotten sentinel, half swallowed by moss and time. "This is as far as I go, sir," the driver said, shifting into park. "From here you walk." Sundar thanked him and stepped out, slinging the leather satchel over his shoulder and gripping the suitcase tightly. The driver waved once and reversed back down the slope, his jeep disappearing into the woods, swallowed by the forest silence. Alone now, Sundar turned to the archway. Etched into the stone, faint but unmistakable, was the same emblem as the medallion, a circle with overlapping triangles, surrounded by 7 stars. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the medallion, and held it next to the symbol. A perfect match. His heart beat faster. This was real. He stepped through the archway and began his hike. The trail was narrow and steep, winding upward through dense foliage. Branches scraped his shoulders, and the air grew cooler as he ascended. Birds chirped above, but even their calls sounded distant. The deeper he walked, the more the forest seemed to press in, like it was watching, like it remembered him. After an hour of climbing, Sundar came upon a stone platform half buried in earth. At its center stood a metal door, rusted, thick, with no handle. He brushed away the leaves and dust, revealing an old keypad. Above it, engraved in Tamil, were the words, "Only truth opens what time has sealed." He paused. The letters from his mother? The USB drive. He pulled out his laptop, connected the drive, and waited. A file popped up. Initiate_access.exe. He clicked it. A terminal screen opened. Rows of code flashed, followed by a single prompt. Enter the true name of the guardian. He froze. Guardian. He remembered the letter. His grandfather, Dr. Shivaprakash Narayanan. He typed it. Access denied. He tried Lakshmi Narayanan. His mother. Access denied. Asterisk. He sat back, thinking hard. Guardian. It must be metaphorical. Someone who protected the knowledge. The legacy. Who was it? Then it hit him. He typed one word. Amoxis. Granted. The keypad beside the door blinked green, and with a groan of gears, the door began to shift. Slowly, painfully, the ancient hinges turned, revealing a staircase leading underground. Damp air wafted out, tinged with metal and age. He stepped inside, flashlight in hand. The tunnel descended sharply. Moss-covered walls lined with old copper. Wiring surrounded him. It looked like a bunker, a lab buried beneath the hills. After what felt like an eternity, he reached a heavy vault-like door. Beside it was a biometric scanner, obsolete, yet still blinking faintly. He stared at it. He had no idea how to override it. Just then, a voice echoed through the chamber. Asterisk. You came? Sundar turned sharply, nearly dropping his flashlight. An old man stepped into the light from a side corridor. His face was weathered, eyes sharp, a long scar running down the left side of his face. He wore a lab coat that was torn and stained. Who are you? Sundar asked cautiously. You look just like your grandfather, the man said, voice filled with awe. He was a good man. And your mother, she was brave. Very brave. How do you know them? The man stepped closer, extending a shaky hand. I am Dr. Ananth Ramanujam. I was your grandfather's colleague. We built Veda together. When he was killed, I disappeared. The government shut everything down, labeled it classified failure. Your mother smuggled out the data and preserved what she could. We thought it was over, but she always said you would come. One day, Sundar's chest tightened. The weight of generations pressing down. What is Veda really? He asked. Anath gestured toward the vault. Come, you need to see it. With a flick of his hand, he activated the scanner. It read his iris, clicked, and the vault hissed open. Inside was a chamber glowing with soft blue light. Rows of terminals, humming equipment. And at the center, a large sphere, floating inches above a magnetic base. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. This, Dr. Anath said, voice reverent, is the Veda core. A clean energy reactor, years ahead of its time. No radiation. No pollution. Powered by a stabilized synthetic neutron structure. Your grandfather's dream was to give free energy to the world. To make power abundant, accessible. But when certain powers realized it couldn't be monetized, they buried it. Sundar stood frozen. He wasn't just holding a family secret. He was standing in front of something that could change humanity. Why me? Sundar whispered. Why didn't Amma tell me sooner? Because, Dr. Anath said, you weren't ready. Not as the CEO of Google. Not as a technocrat. but as a son, a seeker of truth. Only then could you understand the responsibility. Sundar looked at the sphere. Its glow reflected in his eyes. It's still operational? Yes, but the world isn't ready. Then we'll make it ready. Dear Aneth turned to him. You understand what that means? Governments will resist. Corporations will fight it. You'll be targeted. Sundar nodded slowly. I was born for this, wasn't I? Yes, the old man said. Your mother made sure of that. Just then the chamber lights flickered. Dear Aneth frowned. Someone's triggered the outer perimeter. Sundar's mind flashed back to the hotel message. You are being watched. We have to move, he said. We can't let them shut this down again. Dia Ananth reached under the control panel and pulled out a metallic case. This is a portable version of the core's blueprint. Encoded. Hidden. Only you can decrypt it. Take it. Run if you must. But never let it fall into the wrong hands. Footsteps echoed down the corridor above. Sundar took the case. His journey had just turned into a war. Asterisk, hunted truths, and hidden voice night fell like a shroud over the Nilgiri hills, cloaking the ancient trees and stone paths in a blanket of quiet. That felt more like anticipation than peace. But inside the subterranean chamber, peace was the last thing Sundar Pichai felt. The hum of the Veda core pulsed through the metallic walls like a heartbeat, and outside that pulse danger was drawing closer. Footsteps echoed from the surface tunnels above, synchronized, heavy, deliberate. They were not the steps of lost hikers or wandering locals. These were train boots, and they were coming for him. Sundar clutched the metallic case tightly to his chest. It was smaller than a briefcase, barely thicker than a laptop, yet inside it contained knowledge that could free or enslave the world, depending on whose hands it fell into. The blueprint of the Veda core, synthetic neutron layering, sustainable atmospheric recycling, and the final quantum lattice encryption his grandfather died protecting. His mother had buried this beneath decades of silence and sacrifice. And now it was up to Sundar to carry it forward. We don't have much time. Doctor, Aneth whispered, pulling Sundar into a side passage that curved sharply downward. The tunnel walls were narrow and damp, with rusted wiring trailing along the ceiling. Each step echoed slightly, amplifying the sound of their breath, their fear. This exit was designed during the original lockdown, in case they ever came for us. I never thought we'd use it. Your mother once walked these paths barefoot when she smuggled the first set of plans out. Now you walk them with the weight of the future. They moved quickly, carefully, shadows blending with the darkness. Above them, muffled voices barked in another language American accents. Tactical terms. Code words, they weren't just being watched. They were being hunted. Sundar's mind raced as he ducked beneath a collapsed beam. He couldn't help but wonder how deep this conspiracy went. Who had sent them? A rogue international agency? A defense contractor? Or perhaps a private interest, with ties to energy monopolies threatened by what the Veda core represented? As the tunnel narrowed, Dr. Anant handed Sundar a small earpiece. I rigged the system years ago. There's a satellite uplink hidden in the chamber. If you ever lose, me use this. The passphrase is Sita returns. It'll activate a signal relay, but only once. Why that phrase? Sundar asked quietly, ducking under another metal strut. Your mother's favorite story. The old man said, eyes softening. She? Said Sita didn't just return to prove loyalty. She returned with fire in her heart, and the world changed because of it. They emerged at the end of the tunnel into a small grove hidden by thick foliage. The moonlight filtered through the trees, illuminating a dusty path that led toward a rundown shack near the edge of a steep hill. Inside the shack was a hidden vehicle, an old Jeep, stripped of markings, camouflaged with dust and vines. Dr. Anant turned to Sundar. Take it. Drive to Udi. From there, head to Coimbatore. There's someone you need to meet. You're not coming. Sundar asked. The old man shook his head. I'll hold them off. If they find this place abandoned, they'll keep searching. If they find me, maybe they stop for a while. You'll be arrested. Worse, Doctor. Ananth smiled, eyes gleaming, with something between pride and sorrow. I've lived hidden for 30 years. It's time I stopped hiding. Your mother gave her life to prepare you. Let me do the same to protect you. Sundar's throat tightened. He wanted to protest, to argue, to find another way, but there wasn't time. He climbed into the jeep, started the engine, and looked back one last time. Dear Ananth stood tall under the moonlight, his white coat stained. His body frail, but his spirit unshaken. Double quotes go. He whispered. And Sundar went. The jeep tore down the dirt path, headlights off, the roar of the engine muffled by the dense forest. Every bump in the road felt like a jolt to his soul. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see drones or black SUVs chasing him. But the night held steady, the only witness to his escape. As he reached the outskirts of Udi, the fog began to thicken. Tea estates rolled by, silent and silver under the moonlight. He stopped near a deserted rest house, hid the jeep beneath an old tarp, and changed into plain clothes, just a man traveling alone. The next morning, he boarded a local bus to Coimbatore. November. No first-class ticket, no assistance. Just him, the metallic case, and a world unraveling around him. The journey was long and quiet. The bus rattled along potholed roads, stopping every few miles for passengers who climbed aboard with baskets, babies, and bags of grain. Sundar sat by the window, gazing out at the passing fields and small towns, lost in thought. Children played cricket near broken fences. Old women sold fruit on rusted carts. Everything was simple, ordinary, beautiful. And yet, he was carrying something extraordinary. When he arrived in Coimbatore, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of burnt orange and violet. He made his way to a nondescript bookstore near the train station. The place was dimly lit, shelves stacked with dusty Tamil novels, philosophy books, and old maps. Behind the counter stood a woman in her late 60s, silver hair tied in a bun, eyes sharp like a hawk. You must be Sundar, she said, without looking up. He nodded slowly. Your mother was my student, she added, stepping out from behind the counter. She trusted me. I knew this day would come. She led him through a hidden door at the back of the shop into a small, clean room with a desk, a radio console, and a map marked with red dots. My name is Mira Subramaniam. I was part of the original Veda protection group. There were 7 of us. Now only 3 remain. When your grandfather died, we split the knowledge across the country. The core was only one part. You now carry the final piece. Sundar placed the case on the table. They know, he said. They're coming, Mira nodded. Yes, and they will not stop. But you're not alone. There are people around the world, scientists, activists, dreamers waiting for something like this. Something real, something powerful. Your job is not to hide it. It's to awaken them. But how? Sundar asked. How do I expose this without endangering everyone? Mira leaned in, voice calm. You've built platforms that connect billions. Use that. But don't post. Don't broadcast. Don't shout. Whisper. Let the truth spread like roots beneath the surface. When the world is ready, it will rise. Sundar sat in silence. He had always believed in innovation, in progress, but now he had to believe in revolution. Not of violence, but of truth. A revolution his mother had sparked decades ago, one that now burned in him. He spent the night at Mira's safe house, scanning the documents, uploading encrypted fragments to offline servers, preparing a plan. When dawn broke, she handed him a sealed envelope. Go to Delhi, she said. There's one more person you need to meet, someone from your grandfather's past. He will show you the rest. As Sundar stepped into the morning light, the air smelled different, not just of dust and jasmine, but of change. Far away in the hills. Explosions echoed. Doctor, Ananth's sacrifice had begun. Sundar didn't look back. He moved forward into the heart of truth. Asterisk, the ghost of Delhi was always loud buzzing with the symphony of impatient horns. Footsteps on stone and the cries of hawkers pushing carts full of roasted peanuts. Fresh flowers and knockoff electronics. the city's pulse, was relentless. But to Sundar Pichai, as he stepped off the early morning train and blended into the stream of commuters, it felt strangely hushed, as if time itself was holding its breath. His hoodie was pulled low over his brow, and sunglasses masked his eyes. His footsteps were cautious, deliberate. He wasn't here as a public figure. He was here as a ghost. The envelope Mira gave him had been sealed with wax and carried only a name and address. Professor Rajiv Spide, Sector 24, Rohini. It also included a single line beneath it. He held the key, but walked away from the door. What that meant, Sundar had no idea. But he had long since stopped looking for clear answers. Everything in this journey had unfolded like a riddle, stitched with loss, love, and hidden power. Every step brought more questions, but also a strange sense of purpose. In a world obsessed with progress, he was now walking backward through his lineage, trying to rediscover what the future had once buried. He made his way through the capital quietly. No driver, no assistance. He changed buses 3 times, used cash for every transaction, and avoided cameras wherever he could. By now, he was certain he was being followed. He could feel it not in any visible way, but in that primal, ancient tug behind the ribs, a flicker in the corner of the eye. A man on a bike who slowed too suddenly. A woman at a tea stall who didn't blink enough. He trusted no one now. Not even the shadows. RONI was quieter, greener, filled with old apartment blocks and yellowing government buildings. Sundar followed the narrow alley between 2 concrete towers until he reached an old gate choked with vines. The nameplate was barely legible, rusted by decades of monsoon rains, but he could make out the initials. R.S.B. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Louder. Finally. The door creaked open. A frail man with sunken eyes and a long white beard stood there, gripping a wooden cane. He looked at Sundar for a long time without speaking, then simply stepped aside. "You have your mother's eyes?" he said softly as Sundar entered. The house smelled of dust, paper, and turmeric. Every wall was lined with bookshelves stacked with scientific journals, framed equations, and faded photographs. A few cracked teacups sat on an old wooden table, untouched for what looked like weeks. "I didn't expect you to come," the professor said, sinking into a worn armchair. "Mira told me long ago, but I thought you'd be too busy ruling the world with smartphones and algorithms." "I was," Sundar said honestly, "but then my mother died, and she left me something I wasn't ready for. Not just her letters, but her silence." The professor looked up, eyes glassy. "She was the bravest of us," he murmured. "When your grandfather died, we were told to disband, destroy everything, walk away. And most of us did. I did. But she didn't. She took the pieces and hid them in her son. And now here you are." "She told me nothing growing up," Sundar said. "But now I've seen the Veda core, and I know. This isn't just science. It's hope. Clean, boundless, and real. And that's why they're hunting it." The professor nodded slowly. "Do you know what your grandfather used to say? When power can no longer be controlled, they will try to bury it. And they did. They buried it in bureaucracy, in lies, in threats. And when that didn't work, they buried him." A silence fell between them. Sundar glanced around the room. On one wall hung a black and white photo of 5 young scientists standing together in lab coats. His grandfather stood at the center. Beside him, with a serious face and bright eyes, was the professor himself, 50 years younger. "You held the key," Sundar said, echoing the line from the envelope, but walked away from the door. Professor Bide closed his eyes and let out a shaky breath. "Yes, because they threatened my family, my daughter, my newborn granddaughter. I chose them over science, and I've hated myself every day since." "What did you hold?" Sundar asked. "What piece is still missing?" The professor looked at him carefully, then slowly stood, walked to a safe embedded in the wall behind a false shelf, and retrieved a leather-bound book. It was thick, hand-stitched, with faded ink and yellowed pages. He placed it on the table with trembling hands. This is the logbook. Every test, every failure, every insight your grandfather had. It's the soul of Veda. And inside it, there's something even he never published. A final upgrade. A resonance formula that could make the core self-replicate. That's what they feared most. Sundar opened the book reverently. The equations were dense, scrawled in his grandfather's distinct script. Each page pulsed with intensity, like it had been written with fire and conviction. This wasn't just data. This was a man's life's work, coded into ink dot. But suddenly, there was a knock at the door 3 times. Then, silence. Professor Byde's face went pale. Get into the back room, he hissed. Now. Sundar grabbed the logbook and the case, ducking into the dark room behind a thick curtain. Through a small slit, he watched as the professor shuffled. To the door dot, it creaked open, a man's voice calm, accented, dangerous. We're looking for someone, Professor. South Indian, early 40s, dark hoodie. Maybe carrying something valuable. I don't know what you're talking about, Bide said firmly. A pause. The shuffle of boots. That's a pity. Because you were seen meeting with Meera Subramaniam in 1999, and recently someone saw you visiting the Chennai archives. That's quite a coincidence, isn't it? Old men have old habits, the professor replied. I read. I visit friends. The voice leaned closer. You know what they'll do if we find him here. Another pause. We won't ask again. Professor Bide said nothing. Then, after what felt like eternity, the boots retreated. The door shut. Silence. Sundar emerged slowly, shaking. Why did you protect me? Because I walked away once, Bide said. His eyes filled with something between defiance and sorrow. I won't do it again. Sundar swallowed hard. I need to digitize this logbook. Get it into encrypted cloud cells. Build failsafes. If they destroy the core, we need the knowledge to survive. Then go, Bide said. Go now. They'll be back. Sundar nodded, quickly stuffing the book into a new satchel. Before he left, he turned and asked, Do you regret it? Leaving the project? The professor looked out the window, voice hollow. Every day. But today, Today I'm free. That night, Sundar took a train north using forged papers and arrived in Shimla by dawn. In a rented guest house perched. Above the valley, he spread out the logbook and began the work of rebuilding. His hands moved quickly across the keyboard as he transferred pages into encrypted formats. He created multiple fail-safes, layered protections, time-released uploads to anonymous scientific communities worldwide. As the sun rose, he sat back in the chair, exhausted but energized. His mother's voice echoed in his head. You'll figure it out one day, kinda. And now he finally had but just as he closed his laptop, a notification flashed. Unknown sender. You've gone too far. Attached was a photo of his daughter, taken outside her school. His fingers clenched the table edge. They had crossed the line. They weren't just hunting Veda now. They were coming for his family. Sundar. Pichai stood up. They wanted silence. But now he would make sure the world heard everything. Asterisk. The silence that shook the world. Early morning light in Shimla poured gently through the frosted windows of the mountain guest house, casting long streaks of gold across the wooden floor. Outside, the town slowly stirred to life shopkeepers opened their stalls. Dogs barked in the distance, and a soft mist drifted between the pine-covered slopes. But inside room 17, the world stood still. Sundar Pichai sat hunched at the edge of the small desk, his laptop open before him. Screen still glowing with the last message he had received. Unknown sender. You've gone too far. Attachment. Image_119.jpg. His daughter's photograph taken without her knowledge. Outside, her school in California stared back at him, innocent and unaware. She wore her favorite red jacket, a backpack hanging loosely from one shoulder. A smile barely forming as she looked at something out of frame. It was a perfect snapshot of a normal day. and a chilling message from those who watched from the shadows for the first time since this journey began. Sundar felt real fear, not for himself, not for his name or his reputation or even his life, but for her, for his daughter, his family, his people, his blood. He stood up abruptly, heart racing. The walls of the room suddenly felt too close, the air too thin. Asterisk, they had followed him across continents, from the train stations in Chennai to the safe house in Coimbatore. They had tracked every encrypted upload, intercepted signals, identified associates, and now, finally, reached into the only space that still made him human, his home. Asterisk.